Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. And welcome, everyone. I am so pleased to be here with my guest today, who is the legendary Stewart Pearce. And he has worked with Princess Diana and Marianne Williamson and many other leaders about the voice of change. And it's all about love. Let's welcome Stewart Pearce back to Quantum Conversations. Hello, Stewart.
Well, hello, Loren. It's wonderful to be here. It's always such great fun to share space with you. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back and sharing in this episode your latest work. There it is. Diana, the voice of change. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And so share with us, please, why you wrote this book.
Thinking back, because it's some time ago, writing books takes time, and particularly this one. It's been interesting giving birth to this wonderful, wonderful book. I was spinning around the world working with some very extraordinary people, and particularly with wonderful ladies. It seems that my destiny, the wheel of fortune turns and leads my destiny in the direction of working with remarkable women. And so it's my service to the arousal of the divine feminine. And there I was working with the three very extraordinary ladies who are quite powerful in the world and doing amazing things, like so many extraordinary women are doing, really finding what their voice of change is all about and how they can advance and therefore bring about extraordinary changes in the world. There's a wonderful phrase it's a Japanese proverb that says, when the women's voices are aroused, the mountains move. So I was working with the ladies that I'm talking about at that time, and one of them said, "Didn't you work with Princess Diana?" Excuse me. And I said, "Yes, I have." So she said, "Well, you haven't written a book about it." And I said, "No, I never will. I never will." And so she said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Well, the point about my relationship with Diana was it was completely confidential. So nobody knew what was taking place. And this was a pact that we had when we met, when we were introduced to one another by a friend of Diana's. This was during the last 2 years of her life. And this friend just happened to be an amazing woman, another amazing woman who was a leading restaurateur in this city where I am at the moment, which is London. And Mara Burney was her name, of the famous San Lorenzo restaurant. Mara said, "I have someone for you to meet." And I said, "Who is that?" And she said, "Well, why didn't you just come for lunch and find out when you arrive?" So I said, "No, tell me, who is it?" She'd been immensely generous to me in prior years by introducing me to some of her very celebrated customers, her clients. So I said, "No, do tell me." She said, "What, do you trust me? Come." And so I went, and there was Diana. I had an inkling, of course. I had an intuition. I had a psychic premonition that I was meeting somebody very, very extraordinary. And there was Diana. And to be honest, Loren, when I met her, Diana was in a private room having lunch, and Diana grabbed hold of my arm rather, and her blue eyes, these extraordinary sapphire blue or cornflower blue eyes, looked at me. And in that moment, I fell in love. She was one of the most enchanting, one of the most beautiful, one of the most sweet and kind and funny people I've met. And she said, "You will work with me." And so I said yes. And the pact was that it would be completely confidential for two reasons. Firstly, there was a huge circus going on around Diana. And it was very, very challenging, as we saw, for example, in one aspect of that circus, which was the paparazzi, because they hounded her. And as we know, there was this very unfortunate event that led to her death. As indeed I may say, the British press have also done with Meghan Markle. And so Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have left the shores of the United Kingdom to find their creative destinies elsewhere. Thank heavens, because they've been badly, badly treated. So I didn't want to become involved in all of this circus because I felt that my efficacy, my coaching practice with Diana would not be as best as it could be if I were involved. But she implored me. And so I said, okay, let's make it confidential, which means that I will never report anything that we've done. And she said, yes, but perhaps when I'm gone, prophetically, you could write the exercises down. Well, we were together for 2 years. And during that time, I made sure also that I could heal the psychic wounds and the physical wounds that she had, which were mostly called betrayal. Because over the years prior to us meeting, she'd worked with a number of leading empowerment people. And of course, she was very aware of the mysteries of spirit. And so she interacted with the mysteries of spirit by often going for psychic readings with leading mediums and so forth. All of those people, mostly all of those people, had taken their story post working with Diana and had sold it to the tabloids. And so she had been publicly eviscerated, so to speak. So there were so many wounds to do with betrayal. I didn't want to be part of that. Not that I would have taken her story. I feel that I live through integrity, that I would not have taken her story. But I never, ever, ever wanted. So I didn't speak about her for years and years. And then suddenly here is this leading lady saying, well, why don't you? And in that moment, Diana came right next to me and whispered in my ear, as it were, it's time to write the book. And so she was with me all the way through the process, which interestingly was in this room, in this study here in my apartment in London, where I sat almost like a monk for 3 months and wrote. And she was with me all the time. And we had fun. She laughed a lot. And sometimes we would laugh for the sake, you know, we didn't realize what we were laughing about. We were just laughing because we really enjoyed laugh in the way that children do. She was a person of immense mirth, fun, ease. And I feel that everybody saw that, even though we also saw the tears of the victim. We knew that she was, as we saw with her children, for example, where, you know, there are many photographs or indeed videos of her playing with Harry and William. And she was great fun. So that's how it really came in. The conception was interesting because as soon as the idea came, within a space of 15 minutes, I saw the entire book. Because of course, the task is daunting. Honored I was, but the task is daunting. How can I write about this extraordinary lady? And of course, I didn't want to write in the way that so many people had written, through the kiss and tell notion, or another chronicle, or another diary, because Andrew Morton had done this. And also Tina Brown's Diana Chronicles, I think it's called, is an extraordinary book about the whole journey from the People's Princess to her death. But it's all a diary and a comment on the superficial nature. We never ever feel Diana's soul. We never feel her essence. And that was the interconnectivity that she and I shared, that it was her soul that we were honoring, and it was her soul that we were recognizing was the force that was creating the enormous destiny that she had. And her soul, of course, was the transfiguration of her love, that she loved for the sake of love. One of the few unconditional lovers on our planet, and of course now in the time of her history, so to speak, or maybe I should say her story, rather than his story.
So this essence that when she was with you and right by your side in your apartment for 3 months as you're writing this book, she almost is, well, she is an archetype. Would you say this essence is very powerful? She's almost saintly. So. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I feel that she has ascended into the higher dimensions and is an angel of vast luminosity that corresponds with the archetypal council of the divine feminine. And so she is there with Mary, she is there with the Magdalene, she is there with Kuan Yin, she's there with Lady Portia. She's there with Isis, she's there with Hathor, all the major figures, the archetypal ciphers that we measure our consciousness through, because they're all keys into our consciousness, I feel. And she's there with them. And so the book, the retelling of her story, comes at an immensely powerful time in the conscious evolution of our species, where the women of the world are beginning to awaken to their voice of change, to their voice of liberation, to their voice of love. As we saw with Marianne, who created a thesis around the politics of love, and she wrote the book, and indeed she will continue teaching this, because it seems that within the great republic of the United States, that the definitions that created the democracy, that created the Constitution, the lines have become blurred. So she's taking us back into, where did this come from? Why did those men, essentially, with good wives, how did they create this 250 odd years ago? And what was the sum total of what? So that's what the politics of love is really all about, of how we can go back to a really deep conversation about the nature of the republic by the absolute essence of democracy, and how it fits into the consciousness of our contemporaneous setting, our intelligence of the today, which of course is mightily informed by information technology and all the competitive demands of the modern industrial complex. The same thing here, you see, a retelling of her story, so that all of the major empowerment devices that I've included in the book, all the meditations, all the affirmations, all of the physiological and psychological processes that we move through as ritualed processes, they are there for every woman who wishes to move from the experience of oppression into the throne of their sovereignty, so that they can speak with an open heart and a clear soul what their truth is about this time, their time, your time. The next chapter of history is being written by the women and the girls. I quote His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Well, thank you for helping these women awaken to their voice of love. It really is voice of love. And so, wow, you have written this book that contains the exact material that you worked with Princess Diana on when she was going through this healing of her own and the betrayal. And so that actually helps all of us. I love it. It's wonderful. I want to say something about your work with Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson took the stage in the US presidential election in a very, and we're not talking politics here, but we're talking about the need for or the healing that people have in this separation from politics, from speaking their voice in politics. And I think we all realize that we need to speak our voice on this planet, whether it's in politics or whether it's in another venue or a platform. And so for her to take the stage in a public debate with other people, even in the same party, it was intense, but beautiful how she did stay calm and she did change the conversation. She did uplift the conversation. So I just wanted to give you a moment to talk about that before we talk more about Diana.
Mm, mm. Well, it was again an extraordinary conversation to have with somebody who's been my teacher, my mentor, through reading all of her books and by being part of so many of her great teachings over the years. When she said to me, "Do you think I should run for president?" I said, "Is the Pope Jewish?" I mean, really, of course. But
Wow.
obviously, it needs to be highly strategic. I mean, I'm sure that she consulted with a number of her friends and coaches and acquaintances and so forth. And so my understanding of this brief, so to speak, was that Marianne would be reminding us of a quality of intention within the human psyche, within the human intellect, that really in sonar sound, in sonic resonance, in acoustic, we have not heard for 50 years. Because today we're disturbed by noise. It's the noise of all of the intelligentsia, the noise of this. Shall I, shan't I, will I, won't I? We're going so fast, the noise of the machines. That doesn't mean to say that, of course, 50 years ago, we didn't have a machine. Of course, we had machines, but actually, you know, modern air conditioning, which is there constantly making sound, was not around 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And I'm talking about the time when we last heard exponents of the metaphoric consciousness. And I'm talking about JFK, I'm talking about Bobby Kennedy, I'm talking about Martin Luther King, I'm talking about Malcolm X, I'm talking about some of the great speakers in the civil rights situation, of course, that was, you know, in the late 50s, early 60s, that was really being explored within, well, materialistic and capitalistic America as a republic, but also within religious faith and also within political persuasion. And it's the voice of the heart, do you see, because they were immensely metaphoric. They were immensely informed by poetry from their childhood, because they were educated by people that would have been born in the latter part of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, which was before TV, which was before what we used to call the wireless, before radios came in, way before cellular communications. So if we go back, it's before the noise. If we go back further in history, before the development of the modern machine, the cartwheel, well, I mean, in the early 1600s, there was a Lord Mayor of London that said that all speech was decorated silence. They lived their life by the church bell, by the town crier, and they heard the wheel of the cart moving and the natural noises of the neighing horses, the barking dogs, and the lowing cows, but there were no machines. It's interesting. We have become confounded by machines, and the greatest machine that we become confounded by is this thing called the cerebral dominance. So we wanted to find a vibration that would penetrate or pervade, is possibly a different sound, a different way of putting it, because penetration sounds a very male yang force, into the hearts of the American people. Marianne, of course, is immensely intelligent. And one of the things that happens for her is that she is refueled by her intelligence. It's almost as though she gets high on her own intelligence, as great geniuses do. And what that tends to do is to move the voice into this area here. And if the voice carries on doing this, it becomes very cerebral, almost shouted and stentorian. And I was saying, look, you know, all of your philosophy, all of your thesis is arising from the soul, and the heart is the seat of the soul. So we need to find the vibration in your voice, which she's able to find very, very easily, because she has a very open voice, and she's been speaking professionally for many years, for, well, now 40 years. I mean, you know, because like me, she's in her late 60s. So, you know, we're kids of the early 50s. And so we worked on that so that she could fulfill the resonance of the voice of love, and that she was able to do. So we saw the vibration affecting the people of America by the way that they clicked on to the YouTube recordings of those democratic debates, which of course they're not debates. They're just opportunities for people to speak loudly about what they would like to do. And then there are some very remarkable people that have come forth, as we're talking about one of them, which is Marianne, and voices like Pete Buttigieg,
Yes,
for example, Andrew Yang.
mm-hmm. And I love this because it really is the voice of change. The name of your book, Diana, The Voice of Change. So you assist people all around the world to find this voice of the heart. So let's talk about your book with Diana. Diana, The Voice of Change. In it, you've got some practices. Do you want to share any stories of Diana in there that was particularly funny?
There's so much. Where do I start?
Get the book. The whole
Well,
book is funny. Well, not funny, but the whole book is
it
joyous.
has joyous, doesn't it? It's very light.
Joyous.
It's a celebration of her and the nature of how we need to celebrate today, because we've achieved a lot. There's still a lot to do, but let's slap ourselves on the back and say, hurrah, high five, you know, we're achieving something. Those of us that are conscious, that is. You know, the remarkable thing about Diana is that she was very beautiful and very extraordinary. But the extraordinary bit of Diana was really a public projection. Her fame was a screen that the people of the world projected their wants and desires and their needs onto this screen, and therefore it was called extraordinariness and fame. Whereas inside was a human being who, when she arrived for a coaching session, would immediately say, do you have any washing up I can do? Meaning, you know, I wouldn't put things in the dishwasher. I would leave cups and saucers for her to wash up, because she wanted to get grounded. She wanted to get ordinary. She just wanted to be earthed, and they're very earthy activities, aren't they? And then her next thing would be, can I iron your shirts? I really love ironing. And I said, okay, well, you know, wash up, please. But I don't think I can allow you to do that. That's not something, it just doesn't feel right. She said, no, I can do it. And once or twice, I think I did. I left shirts for her to iron. So very, very ordinary, you see. And this was all part of the relaxation process that was really absolutely crucial. As we know, tension paralyzes, relaxation mobilizes. So the first thing that I needed to do in this immensely sensitive, empathic being was to introduce conscious relaxation processes, conscious mindfulness processes. And because she was responding often in her sensitivity through what I call the startle reflex, she was, you know, because so many shocks, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, so much had been hurled at her, which I personally can identify with, because as a younger person, so much was hurled at me. I guess a lot is still being hurled at me. It's just that I don't always see it now, because I'm engaging in a different process. You know, I'm working in an environment which is symbiotically involved in my own remote vibrational frequency, where she was being criticized a tremendous amount. And of course, we know the story, as I enlist in the book. The criticism she was that was given to her, that she received, was more from the establishment than from the people. When I say the people, I mean the ordinary people, the people of the world. The establishment meaning those who organized the British royal family and the government itself. They were cruel in their dismissal of her. They were antagonistic in their repudiation and their distortion of her, the reviling of her. So this hurt. Of course, as we know, sticks and stones will break our bones, but words will never hurt us. But, you know, I remember my mother saying that to me, and I remember saying, thanks, Mom, but it hurts. In other words, that with each word, there is also a trajectory of energy that penetrates into our flesh, that penetrates into our field. And if you're sensitive, you feel these things. So the first thing that was important was to allow her to really release a lot of this trauma through relaxation. So there were very intense relaxation processes that we move through. She was very alert to her body. So therefore she was very alert, not just to the physiology, but to the sensual and the sensory nature of herself. So she loved to swim, which is a wonderful way for releasing excessive tensions in our electromagnetic field, because the water is an immense nullifier, so to speak, of electromagnetic static. And she loved to go to the gym, so she was working out virtually every day, which allowed her to feel the prowess of her body, providing herself with a form, because she needed that form to move through the world in, because she was always in the public gaze, and a rippling effect of musculature and power through all of the sinews, the meridian lines of her body. She regularly consulted Qigong and acupuncture practitioners to really feel lithe and vibrant. So tuning into her body was a way of being able to create not a castle, but a really powerful form of architecture for her to live in. And then it was a question of moving into the continuous self-empowerment devices that we looked at, that I've written about in the book and given countless examples of using prayer because prayer, after all, is a neural pathway straight through to the mind of God, of using affirmations, of working very specifically on the voice of change, of how to not be, not use a little voice like this, but really sitting in her voice, which she began to do. And of course, the principal gift that I offer, which is, have you found your note? That we each have a signature note. We each have a sound that when we resonate it, it takes on an immense flow of authenticity in our beings. And this isn't something that altogether through our lives we allow ourselves to experience, because when we move into that level of authenticity, we move into a wonderful flow of vulnerability. And of course, in our world, often vulnerability is seen to be a weakness rather than a strength, although that's changing. And particularly through the work of someone like Brene Brown, who is just exquisite. And going back to Diana, the ability that we all saw for her to be vulnerable, that she would weep very easily and not be embarrassed by that. She was embarrassed in the family because showing emotion on that level was seen to be not comme il faut. It was not a good thing to do in the British royal family. But in public it was. And there was one occasion, I remember I was with her in Liverpool, where she went to see the crowd before going into an official opening of something or other. And she walked over and started speaking to a group of ladies. And one of them put her hand up and put her hand on Diana's cheek and said, "We want you to know we really love you." And she burst into floods of tears. So they held her. While the security guys were going crazy, they held her. They just hugged her, as any mother would to her daughter. And Diana recovered. So her vulnerability was very easy for her to show. It was quite natural. But at the same time, as we know, even on that level of openness and honesty, there is also a masking, because if we show it beyond our mask, we're often hurt bitterly. So the work was really multifarious. It existed on many different levels, but there was always this extraordinary oscillation between, we're preparing for the world stage because you are the queen of everybody's hearts. So what we need to do is not some sort of clever title, although it's effective. We needed to look into, well, you're not going to sit in the throne and be consecrated during the ceremony of coronation. But what we need to do is to honor that becoming a queen means that you have certain duties and responsibilities to the people. And so what I did was to show Diana 7 levels of consecration that we move through, that are all derived from the jewels of the human experience. For example, one of the things that we started with, what are the gifts of grace? And we determined that there were 3 principal gifts of grace: gentleness, gratitude, and generosity. So there's nothing there that's rocket science worthy. It's very simple. But the difficulty is that when we're fearful, or when we're stressed, or when we have too much noise and we're rushing through life, we forget about gentleness, and we forget about gratitude, and we forget about generosity. I mean, just as simple as we're leaving the supermarket and we receive the goods and we give them money, or we use our card, and the cashier says, "Thank you, ma'am." Do we say thank you back, or thank you, sir? And it's rare, because we're rushing, because there's something to do, which is, feed the kids, got to get to the gas station. The car doesn't really, the SUV doesn't have enough gas, whatever. Oh my God, my mother's going to call me. We forget. And yet the gentleness and the gratitude of that generosity opens up the flow of what the heart is all about, is the seat of the soul.
So as you're teaching people how to tap into this voice, and we all have it, as we all can embody the energy of kings and queens, not from an egotistical or a dominant way, but from a royal way, where that's an aspect of us that we have every right to. When we take on those capacities, if you were to teach people how to use that voice of change, would you simply instruct them to feel those three aspects of grace, the gentleness, the gratitude, and the generosity? Because if we sit and think about that and then speak, our voice indeed changes, doesn't it?
Mm, mm. And
Yeah.
it's about being, it's mindfulness, isn't it? This is really what we're talking about, this new field of conscious development that we're hearing that Oprah is pioneering a great project about. Being mindful means we become present. So we measure every piece of behavior, not in some rigid, stringent way, but we measure, well, am I being gentle here? Am I being grateful? So it becomes part of our consciousness. As a result of that, because thought creates reality, we vibrationally shift. Because we see the effect that it has on the people, or indeed the atmosphere that we're moving through, we see the effect immediately. There is a response, and all successful communication is based on response. If you don't get the response you want, change strategy. The difficulty is that in the pursuit of that, we often become frustrated, irritated, and angry, and we lose gentleness, gratitude, and generosity. But if we can see that just by initiating that force, there's an immediate response, what that does is provide conviction. And conviction is a force multiplier. Because it feels good, you want to do more. So we literally, let's do more gentleness. Isn't that the meaning of the gentle man or gentle woman? We use the phrase or the words rather so meaninglessly. Oh, he's a gentleman. What does that mean? Well, he's a gentleman. And so how can we deliver this if we're unaware of our behavior? That's the point. And if we're fearful, we're just consumed by fear. We're not aware of, forgive me, I thought I'd switched that off. We're not aware of the quintessence of what we are all about, which is love.
Yes. So then, someone who comes to you to work with the voice of the heart, what would you say, oh my goodness, is the major reason? Do you have a couple of common reasons where someone is blocked? I know you said it's the machines, or we get excited, or we get anger. Do you really help them unravel like a program or a belief system? Is there something from maybe their childhood that is keeping them from speaking that voice of love? What do you find out when you look at the threads across all your clients?
Well, there's so many. I mean, because we're
Yeah,
all ordinary,
diverse. Yeah.
very diverse. We're perfectly imperfect, or imperfectly perfect. Um, So I want to go back to a trace element that you shared with us just now about, I feel that what we're all doing is finding a way of living our sovereignty so that we become the master mistress of our own destiny. Now, effectively, what this means in our societies is that we no longer need a sovereign on the throne. It's perfectly obvious that we proved this. And of course, the United States of America is a prime example of we don't need a monarch. So if we don't need a monarch, what do we need? Well, what we need is to recognize that the belief, faith, and trust that we placed in the monarch is something that we need to fortify, well, not fortify, we need to furnish within our own consciousness. And one of the ways of doing this is by recognizing that the king and the queen may be human beings in the past, but are really archetypes. So they're keys for our consciousness. So if we can actually find the king, queen within us, automatically, this is what the pursuit of we human beings in all civilized communities have been about for time immemorial, that if we can find the king, queen within us, then we automatically become very balanced within our own sovereignty. So it's easy to make choices about moving forward. It's not always easy in response to what we get. So we have to renegotiate that, particularly when there's a strong force on the outside saying no, because they're your line manager, or it's your husband in the case of a lady, or maybe in a case of a man, his wife is saying no. We have to negotiate that. But in that moment, your sovereignty is being tested. So it's an archetypal journey. And this was one of the key features that I introduced to darling Diana, because she was, as we saw, the innocent, the naive. She was very much of the archetype of the maiden, even though she'd had children. And of course, we know when ladies have had children, they change. Something else comes into their consciousness. In other words, they evolve in relation to the degree of selflessness, to the degree of all oneness in looking after the children. But they can also become immensely fierce, rather like a lioness. You know, the lioness will never allow the male lion to eat before the children have eaten. And if he comes along and disturbs the children, and obviously with one swipe of a paw, he can kill a cub, she is fierce. And the male lions will run away because of her fierceness. That's the conviction that I was talking about. So if we can find that quality of balance within us of the male, female, king, queen, we find our sovereignty. So the beginning of of that description that you gave us, I think, is absolutely quintessential. How can we then be able to release the indecision, to release the I don't know, I don't know, I don't know? A number of times I hear from clients, I don't know, I don't, and then they know all the time. They just are not giving themselves a moment to drop into the soul, the seat of the soul being the heart, and dowsing in the heart, because this is confounded by, they say, whatever decisions you're making up here are inaccurate, but the heart always knows. You know, this says, shall I, shan't I, will I, won't I? The heart always knows. And we know that from our childhood because we always knew whom we could trust and whom to distrust. You just feel it vibrationally.
But yet we were programmed to get out of the heart and stop thinking with the heart. So we're just coming back around to it. Okay. Well, your book is about the time that you spent with Diana. So you knew her at the end of her life. Sadly, it was shortened way too soon. Um, how did you see her transform? Right, even with her children, she was treated in a way that was sad by the royals, to be stripped of her title and all of that, and to be just followed by the paparazzi. But yet here you were working with her. Did you see a transformation or a level of peace along the way with her?
It was enormous.
Mm-hmm.
She began to learn her sovereignty. And she began to see what her true destiny was as a peace ambassadress, not as the Queen of England, but as the Queen of everybody's hearts. Hey. And you know, when she was, as you put it, stripped of her title, I wouldn't phrase it thus. She thought it was liberating. And all that went was HRH, Her Royal Highness. She was still Diana, Princess of Wales. She was a clever negotiator, you see, because she knew that if she had that quality, that degree, her children would never be taken from her because they're royal princes. That could have been a ghastly act. Fortunately, the Queen, in her wisdom, had more sense than to take the boys from her, because that could have she could have been disgraced. Remember, only 300 years prior, members of the royal family who did that would have had their heads removed. I write about that in the book. She got through. So she was immensely, her common sense was just exquisite. She could be immensely impetuous and then rue the day, but she always learned. It didn't stop her wildness. So what I saw happening was this, well, you can probably sense through the tenor of what I'm saying. What I saw happening was I was aiding and abetting her to be naughty. I was aiding and abetting her to be wild. I was aiding and abetting her to express the totality of her being. I was aiding and abetting her to have fun. I was aiding and abetting her to be the radiant being that she was. And so we worked on expanding her aura. She was already beautiful. But of course, she sought out new stylists who helped her find haute couture clothes. She had the money to spend on it as a representative of that particular frequency or iconic status, and became the most photographed woman in recorded history. But at the same time, all of that was about really feeding this natural understanding of how she loved her body and loved the feeling of what it is to love for the love of the sake alone of love. I mean, you know, there are things that I write about in the book which are completely unrecorded in any of the other books, that she would spend 2 or 3 nights a week when she wasn't engaged in state occasions or whatever, her charities, just going to a hospital. She would just drive up to a hospital, park the car, and walk in and say, do you have anybody that I can sit next to? Can you imagine that you're on reception in a general hospital in A&E or whatever, and Diana, Princess of Wales, walks in saying, can I help? And you know, I went once or twice with her, and I had records in my journal of some of the people. Some of the people are still around. I went and saw them. I called, you know, I emailed or whatever and contacted them. Said, is it okay if I come and meet you and interview you? And they all virtually said the same thing. Was she an angel? Because when she sat next to me, there was a glow. Once they got over their nervousness of, oh, it's Diana, Princess of Wales. And they all said that when she touched me, because Diana was a toucher, so she would always, as I was saying when we first met, she grabbed hold of my arm and said, you will work with me, won't you? I mean, what do you do with that? Of course you do. Yes, 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 yes. That they said a bolt of electricity moved through me and I can still feel it. Well, that was a gift of grace. She was a cipher or a channel or a vessel or a conduit for divine grace. That was what I saw. All of this was given permission to be expressed, because elsewhere, prior to this date, it was being repudiated, particularly by her ex-husband, because he was disturbed by the fact that she was gaining more attention than he, understandably.
Yeah.
But you know, the way that he then emitted that was unfortunate. So I'm sure Charles over the years has learned a lot. We all make mistakes. And then we learn by our mistakes, we hope, with grace, you know? So
Yes, with grace.
he's grown enormously, just as she did. So it was this extraordinary, you know, you can see I'm talking about many different levels, but this ability that Diana had to recognize her destiny, that she was the queen of everybody's hearts, that she could use her position to become an even greater peace ambassadress around the planet. The remarkable things that she did with AIDS, the movement and direction of Mother Teresa, the landmine issue, and all the other charities that she was part of. Pioneering freedom for the homeless and the disenfranchised, pioneering healthcare and further research for cancer, etc., etc. All of these grew so that she could feel this is my caring, this is my need to spread just a little bit of love. I mean, one of the things she always said was, a hug is environmentally friendly. We need more hugs. So she would just hug people. And then, of course, you go on to the more public level, or that more austere, formal level, where, for example, I remember a note from Henry Kissinger, who said that when Diana looked at you, she melted grown men's bones with her eyes. And that there would be people, because he was very intimate with her, you know, he was very close to her in formal situations. So he often sat next to her at a grand dinner party, you know, et cetera, particularly in New York, which was her bliss city. She loved New York. And people would queue up to speak to him and say, can you introduce me? And so he would dutifully introduce a prime minister, a president of a country, not just of a company, and he would introduce them and they would immediately become like 15-year-old boys because of the immense emanation of this beautiful, charming, exquisite young woman. Interesting. So she evidently had a force that grew and grew and grew and grew on that level. What I was responsible for is acknowledging her radiance, allowing her to feel that this was an honoring, that it was a gift from the divine, and that we needed to expand it, because then her force would ignite others to rearrange their own processes so that they could allow their auras to expand. And isn't this really what the bodhisattva do, the saints do? Was she an angel? Well, angels have vast, luminous auras. Is this all making sense?
Well, I would say yes, she was an angel. Yes, and definitely here to really awaken hearts, and really interesting that she came in and was part of the royal family and helped to adjust attitudes or whatever was needed there.
Well,
So,
she created a revolution.
yes. And so, um, has she said any, has she given you any messages about current world affairs or her children or anything along those lines? Or is it a message of love? Can you share her messages?
Well, her message is just love. Her message is about we need to unify in all oneness. That it's completely ridiculous that political or industrial complex is moving us into division, whether it be the divisive nature of what's happening in the ruling power, the ruling hierarchy within your great republic, or within the nature of what's happening here vis-a-vis Brexit. That her messages are purely about love. But this is I don't believe that she was an angel. I believe that she is an angel, and that's what that says. In other words, my first choice was, what am I going to put on the front cover of this book? Is it going to be another photograph? Because all the other books about her have photographs. But she was the most photographed woman in recorded history. Why would I want to put a photograph on an exquisite book, which is all about her soul? The photographs were just about her fame, her record of beauty. Like they said of Helen of Troy, her face would sink 1,000 ships. It's the same thing. So I wanted to, and I feel this is an interesting story because the book is designed to heal the trauma of her passing. Because wherever I am and I mention, people say, what do you do? What's your next project? This is before it was published, obviously. And I would say, well, I want to write a book about, I'm writing a book about her. Thousands of people, I'll buy a book. And then they would go into their woe stories about the 7 days of doom, as it was called, from her death to her, the funeral. I would hear nothing but, and I became really aware, we need to heal this. She wants us to heal this because she's in joy. She's in the source. She's working on spirit level to bring about world peace. This is what she did when she was here. It hasn't changed. She wants us all to rise to love, not descend into woe. That's not what the voice of change is about. The voice of change is about the emancipation of the heart and soul. And so I believe that she is this angel, and that's what this portrait is all about. I asked some great artists around the world who knew her, would you please sketch me? And I gave them specific brief. In fact, 5 in all, one after the other. And all they created, God bless them, was sentimental sketches of how they thought she was. In other words, what they were doing is recreating the psychic wound that they experienced when she passed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the jubilation of what happened. And I'd love to talk about that in a second. If that, what was that force? That's what I've written in the book, that in the sense of I've answered the unanswerable and questioned the unquestionable. Was that a ritual killing? And if it was a ritual killing, what was that took place where 5.9 billion people were in the heart chakra and we wept for days, creating unusual social phenomenon? In Europe, the stocks of flowers ran out in every florist. The newsprint that the newspapers were printed on ran out because so many newspapers to do with news flashes were being created to transport the information around the world about the horrible 7 days of doom, etc., etc., etc. Unusual social phenomenon took place. The sort of phenomenon that takes place in time of war. just as we remember from the horror of 9/11, something unusual took place in the horror of that incident, which spread all the way around the world. So eventually I put out a big SOS to Diana saying, look, all of these wonderful artists are coming along, but all they're doing is recreating the horror of your passing. And I want everybody to experience the joy of your luminosity. What do I do about it? All will be well. Well, of course, soul or spirit is going to say all will be well, because effectively in divine blueprint, all is well. But, you know, being a restless little boy, human being, even though I'm of a certain maturity, it's like, well, thank you very much, all will be well. But what am I supposed to do in the meantime? All will be well. So I was taught patience. And then suddenly, I put an advertisement, just an informal posting on social media. And one or two people came forward. And somebody said, have you heard of this chick, this beautiful girl woman who's an artist on this island in the United Kingdom? And I looked at her website and I thought, oh my God, this is a beautiful artist called Kerry Beale, living in the north of England. Stunning website. So I immediately emailed her saying, I want to have a conversation with you. I've got a unique commission for you. And I heard nothing. I gained no response. 3 weeks passed by. I'd forgotten about it. I was on to something else. Please help, please help. And then suddenly I got an email from this lovely, lovely person, Kerry Beale, and we arranged a telephone conversation, and we had the most amazing telephone conversation. And she got it immediately and said, Stewart, I'm going to paint something that you will be proud of, and you will be proud of me. Her story is then that she went off for a long meditative walk onto some wild ground into nature, and Diana spoke to her, and she saw the image in her consciousness, and then went home and started painting. So that when I received this, I burst into floods of tears, because that was exactly what I'd seen in my own consciousness. This is Diana now, not Diana then, which is why we can still see Diana, but there's something different.
Just hold that up for a minute there. That is radiant. Yes.
Do you see? And the way that I illustrated it for Kerry was, I want the eyes of Diana, which we can't really see that fully because of the light here, because it's very dark in night where I am. The eyes are these brilliant blue eyes, so that, let's say you're walking through one of the airports of the world. There you are flying from Colorado to Los Angeles, and you're walking through your terminal and you go into a Hudson to buy, I don't know what, chewing gum or analgesic because you have a headache, or one of those neck cushions, and you suddenly see that. What's that? That I wanted people to be attracted to the source of her reference, you see. And I feel that this will be an award-winning piece of art, you know. It certainly looks beautiful on the website, and so forth and so forth. So that through these dimensions, albeit they may be commercial or informative, what they're also doing is providing us with a vessel where we feel the radiation of this exquisite woman. This is just the beginning, by the way, of a big project, which will be called the Diana Heart Path.
The Diana Heart Path?
Heart Path, yeah.
Heart Path.
It will be a series of workshops or seminars that where women can come, women of the world can come and share their stories, their joy and their travail, so that we can move from negative into positive. It won't just be me running them. There will be other extraordinary people who will be all within the vibration of Diana's heart path. That will lead to a major conference in London and New York, once a year, the Diana Heart Path Conference, where women of the world can come and share, feeling communion, feeling kindred spirits, move from negativity into empowerment, and also be inspired by remarkable women who have done something in the world. They could be in a very, very ordinary status. It could be an amazing woman that I met the other day here, whose children were killed in a terrible road accident. And she immediately gathered up all of the disenfranchised children or children that have been battered by their own parents in her own community, and has started this charity for orphaned or dispossessed or children that have been violated. I mean, just extraordinary. Or it could be Oprah. Come and talk to us and share with us your story. So there will be a Diana Hart Club that people, and there will be, you know, weekly or monthly teachings online, and a whole series of events that will be just there for the Diana. So it's the beginning of a revolution for the women of the world to come together and experience a rare degree of loving.
Under the overlight of Diana. Beautiful. All right. Your book, it is available on Kindle. It's out on Amazon now. Let's give a little plug for it. We've got a note on our page here that it's on the Kindle version. Is that still available for that really great price?
Kept purely for your event, Lorraine.
Okay.
So
All
it's
right. So it's beyond the
available.
4th. You can still get that even though we're past the 4th. Okay.
I've asked the gang, you know, all of my team, to keep the page open with Kindle at $2.99.
On Kindle. That's awesome. Yes,
Just on Kindle, yes. Which means that actually it's become a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It's been sold
of
in
course.
over 30 countries around the world, and it's rated as the #1 bestseller. The
Good.
book itself, the hardback or the softback, because this is soft, not hard, is available through amazon.co.uk. The reason why that's so is to do with a protocol or regulation within Amazon, that it can be available in one country, a new book, but then it has to wait to be available in the USA or the rest of the world. But anybody in the US can easily get it through amazon.co.uk. It's advertised on both websites, both .co.uk and .com. Or there's a brief which I think is the URL that you're referring to, which is https colon 2// my book in lowercasing .2/ Diana capitalized, all in what do we call it? Not lowercasing, but
My books, uppercase, uppercase. So my book / all uppercase Diana.
my book .full stop period 2/ Diana in higher casing, all in
Okay,
capital. Yeah. It's very, very,
beautiful.
or just go and it's, you know, Diana, the Voice of Change on amazon.com or amazon.co.uk. It's just that you can only buy Kindle on .com, whereas you can buy both Kindle and the book itself for
Yes.
$13, I think, or something.
Sometimes we just like the real activation of the physical book, but the Kindle is wonderful. And what a gift for $2.99. All right, that's available through those booksellers. And you've got the book right there. Can you give a brief overview? It looks pretty thick there, and you've got little stories and meditations and exercises. Can you give us that brief overview of that book?
It looks pretty thick,
It looks pretty thick. It does.
meaning it's going to require effort to read it.
No, I actually love that good thick book. Um, so does it have like a little bit of stories and things and all of that good stuff that
It's
gets you
full,
interested and amped up?
packed full of anecdotes, stories, naughtinesses, and then amazing exercises and quotes from the great and the good. Quotes by Oprah, Marianne, Gabrielle Bernstein. I mean, just of me. I've just found one by me. Yeah, I mean, just the quotes go on and on. Of course, lots of quotes by Diana, references to "Like a Candle in the Wind," Elton's song, and the whole song is here, you know, to remind us of the extraordinary level of action that took place. Nelson Mandela. I mean, there are poems by Maya Angelou. I mean, you know, they're all Diana's favorite inspirational pieces that she either discovered herself or whenever she came to see me, I would say, look what I found, darling. And she would say, what? And Reed say, oh my God, I want this. So I said, well, that's why I created it. You know, I've just printed this out for you. And of course, you know, when I worked with her, it was 95, 97, and we were only just beginning to use cellular devices. You know, I mean, I had a huge desktop that it took hours to sort of download anything, I remember. I try to be there for them, said Diana, to hold their hands, to talk with them, to just be there with nothing but compassion. Whatever helps, for we all need someone. I seem to draw a certain strength from all of these encounters. Therefore, I can shine light wherever I go. That was Diana. So the book, some people have referred to the book as a change maker, and that they can't put it down, that it grips them. So a number of ladies, mostly people that I know quite well, God bless them, have acquired copies and said, I read it in one sitting. It only took 6 hours.
It's beautiful.
Could you please go back and read it again? Because I'm sure that was a very quick read. They said, no, actually it was, I feel I have the essence of it. It's just, it's gripping. I can't put it down. It's a page turner.
Beautiful,
And
beautiful
isn't it
book.
interesting that it was rejected by, I self-published this, that it was actually
Great.
rejected by all the major publishers because it wasn't a kiss and tell.
That they would have paid $1 million or more for, right? So beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing forth such a beautiful book. It really is wonderful. And it is the radiance of Diana and the voice of change that we can all access and we can all step into. It is the rise of the divine feminine in partnership with the divine masculine as well. And that is not only outside of ourself, but within ourself as well. So thank you. Well, Stewart Pearce, I would like to invite our listeners to not only check out your book, but also check out Stewart's special offer. He has worked with us on a mastery empowerment course. We've done 2 of those, and those are very affordable processes and events to actually tune in and tap into your own voice of change. We are now going to be concluding our live stream, but we're going to stick around in our after party. So here's a bit.ly quick link to the special offer with Stewart and a way that you can join our after party. We are on Zoom. It is where you can meet with other like-minded people, like-hearted people, and share with us, and also ask a question if you'd like. So please join us there. Stewart, is there anything you'd like to add about the mastery empowerment courses that we did and also the angelic music that you've got?
I think the most significant thing is that through the radiation that we've been talking about in the mastery course, that people are literally drawn through the determination of their own psyche, meaning that spirit as it moves will either draw to the radiation or not. And so each person that comes will come with their own special quest. And that quest will be answered by something within the program.
Beautiful.
So this is all about finding personal sovereignty rather
Yes.
than use this and tick the box and everything will be fine. That's not what it's about.
Personal sovereignty and empowerment. I love that self-empowerment. The book, Diana, The Voice of Change, is all about that. And you can learn alongside Diana the tools that she used to help her radiate this beautiful voice in the name of sovereignty. Stewart Pearce, thank you, thank you, thank you for this quantum conversation, this QCTV episode. I would love to just have you close our circle with just a something to inspire for that voice of love.
Well, hopefully all we've said has been inspirational. But you mean a meditation? Is that what you're asking?
No, we don't have to do a meditation. Just a reminder, maybe summing up all that we've talked about in our show today, this message of love.
Okay, so what I feel is that I'll commit myself by sharing something from the book. So
Beautiful.
the book, Diana, Voice of Change, throws a new light on the most famous woman of her time, as well as drawing you and your own dazzling transformation to the fore, your own authentic signature tone, and your own illuminated soul resonance. For the first time ever, you will be able to discover the truth about Diana's extraordinary life principles, the things that created her love, and the secret keys that focused her destiny. These same keys can be used to focus your own destiny in order to help you find the voice of change resonating through your whole being and assisting you to live your soul's purpose. This is the legacy that Diana wanted to give the women and the men of this world.
Thank you, Diana. And thank you, Stewart. Very beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
We are going to stick around with Stewart in an after party. Please join us. We begin immediately after this broadcast. Now it is time to dance our way to the cosmic heart. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you for shining your radiant light.